Slothfulness. We are built to exercise. We were designed to move. Let's do it. Let's exercise. Stress. Stress undermines your immunity. And I'm going to have to point this out because there are people who are very diffident about the role of immunization. Immunization unquestionably helps in keeping disease under control. We don't see smallpox anymore. We see very little polio. In fact, the only places where we're seeing polio is where there have been failures in the immunization program. Parts of the United States have not seen measles, but since the anti-vax movement has been going since about 1990s, we're beginning to see some in pockets of resurgence of measles and other preventable infectious diseases. So immunization is a very, very important component on keeping population health and community immunity. Nutrition. We don't have time to go through everything. Lots of vegetables, fruits, variety of whole grains, healthy plant proteins, healthy fats. Choose unrefined foods. This afternoon on the plane, they said, you have two choices for lunch. One is a Wellington cheeseburger, and the other one is couscous with vegetables. And as I ate my vegetables and couscous, which were tastily done, I looked at colleagues just across the aisle and I thought, you are ideal candidates to keep the cardiologists in business for a long time. We are very blessed that the foods that have been instructed and we've been told to enjoy are those which build not only their most healthy body, but the best immune system. And these essential nutrients in a balanced vegetarian diet supply all the nutrients that support immune function, antioxidants, stimulate the production of the blood cells and the white cells, help repairing the DNA and the life cycle of the cell, and keep us healthy and our immunity healthy. And the essential nutrients of zinc, which come in, notice these. And I'll send Elder Daniel the PowerPoint and you can go through it at your leisure. But here are just, this is a summary of all the good things that are available in a balanced, healthy, vegetarian, plant-based diet. All the vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin B6, vitamin C. My American friends and colleagues say I'm wrong, it's vitamins, but work it out, they're the same thing. Vitamin A, vitamin B6, vitamin C, all available. Vitamin D, vitamin E. And remember, supplements should only be taken if you are missing something. People are saying, oh, you've got to take bucket loads of supplements every day. Do it in consultation with your caregiver, because sometimes supplements can be actually dangerous. Vitamin B12 is one which I'd like to just give the message quickly. B12 for people who are total vegetarians or vegans must be supplemented. And even we who are over-lacto vegetarians, as we get older, we don't absorb B12 as well as we should, or we might. So it needs to be supplemented. We've talked about exercise, drinking pure water, sunshine, rest, fresh air. All of those things are important. Temperance, balance in life, balanced nutrition, positive informed choices, and optimistic outlook. A merry heart doth good like a medicine. It's like the little girl who was walking with her father and they saw a donkey in the field, and the little girl said to Father, that donkey must be a very good Christian. And the father said, well, why would you say that? She said, just look at his long face. Let's not be like that. We have a hope. We have a message. We have a mission. Trust in God is foundational. And immunization is not an either or, it's a together with. Know your numbers, act on your numbers, have your health checkups. And we've talked about this as well. Minimize your risk in this pandemic. Wash your hands, avoid contact with people who have infections. Wear masks appropriately. As I say, I haven't worn a mask as long as this since I've been in the operating rooms. Stay at home if you're symptomatic. Clean and disinfect regularly touched surfaces. I was struck by a sign I saw at an immigration counter in Kigali, which said, "Do not place your hands on contact surfaces," but the sign was worn out from all the hands that had been on it. Responsible, informed immunization. So what does the church say about vaccines? In 2015, the statement was crafted between 2014 and 2015. The church encourages responsible immunization, and as such, we have no religious or faith-based reason not to encourage our adherents to responsibly participate in protective and preventive immunization programs. And this is something which we have done over the years, since the earliest years of our church. In fact, Ellen White herself took the smallpox vaccine, encouraged it for her family and the community, and she did it for two reasons: for the protection of themselves and of the community. Now, I want you to notice we are talking about responsible immunization, thought through, studied, evidence-based, and the benefits must outweigh the risks. But the church also says that it is not the conscience of the individual and recognizes individual choices. These are exercised by the individual, but here is a qualifier which needs to be noticed. The choice not to be immunized is not and should not be seen as the dogma nor doctrine of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. This statement was 2014-15, voted in April 2015. You can go and see it on the website, it's there. That's long before COVID-19 came along. In fact, I've had letters saying, why was this put in place? It was put in place because we as a church follow healthful practices. And as we send missionaries out, as we teach, as we do public health presentations, as we try and make a difference through our hospitals and our healthcare around the world, responsible immunization is part of that. So the church has also brought out, right in December 2020, once vaccines were released, an informational related to and offering counsel on the COVID-19 vaccine. And this was partly because of the many questions which are coming up, the rapidity of the development of the vaccine, conspiracy theories going around, some other disinformation, religious disinformation. And even now, there's been a more recent document in the last number of weeks. It was released just after annual council, talking about the reaffirmation of the Seventh-day Adventist Church's response to COVID-19. So we have come back to the table. Excuse me, aircraft cabins are dry. It is something that we have had to come back and reassess and reevaluate because there are many questions. Excuse me. So the whole upheaval caused by COVID-19 has caused all kinds of speculations, including misinterpretations of the Bible, talking about, could this be part of the mark of the beast? And in the very first document put out, we stated very clearly, excuse me, that this should not be viewed as the mark of the beast. The vaccine is not the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is related to a spiritual issue. It's not a vaccination issue. But there will be discussions over this weekend, and if you go to the documents that have been produced, and I know that Dr. Diop will be addressing some of this as well. Seventh-day Adventists understand the mark of the beast not to be a literal mark, but a sign of allegiance that identifies the bearer as loyal to the power represented by the beast. And we know exactly what that means. And we know that it's a question related to the law of God and allegiance to the law of God. Of course, some say that it makes the people unclean to have any kind of vaccine. Our Biblical Research Institute has been very helpful in helping to clarify that, particularly pointing out that certain substances, when used in a medical setting, even biblically, and not serving as food, could be acceptable as a medication. The current science on the vaccines talks about those vaccines approved by the World Health Organization. They have been rigorously studied, although it's been rapid. And one of the things people are saying, well, you know, this mRNA technology, and there are people that are going to talk very specifically about that. This is a brand new technology. It's not. It's been around for over 15 years. It's something which has been used previously. Vaccines can have side effects, absolutely. But with the rare exceptions, immunized individuals don't land in an ICU and do not die from the disease of COVID. Whereas those who have not been immunized, and we're seeing this very clear distinction now, that people who are not vaccinated are the ones who are bearing the brunt of the pandemic. Immunized individuals can transmit COVID-19 virus, but do it at a much lower rate. And the current vaccines offer protection even in the cases of variants, which has been very encouraging. And I would also hasten to add that despite the fact that immunity wanes both with natural infection and with a vaccine, doesn't mean that the vaccine is a failure. We see the same thing with the flu injection. It needs to be repeated on an annual basis. Does the vaccine, can it cause side effects? Yes, they can be. They mostly of a minor degree. There have been a very, very small number of deaths related to the vaccine, and not out of proportion to the numbers we've seen with other vaccines over the years that they've been implemented too. What is very important, if you go back to what I mentioned right in the beginning, does the benefit outweigh the risk? And the science, the epidemiology, the numbers are showing clearly that this is the case. Over 5 million have perished in this pandemic. 256 million cases on a conservative estimate worldwide of COVID-19. But right now we have more than 7.6 billion doses of vaccine have been administered. And deaths and case numbers are dropping dramatically in countries where the vaccine is being used. So we conclude not only with COVID-19, but with infectious diseases overall, including polio, diphtheria, hepatitis, typhoid, smallpox, which has disappeared. Immunization, along with sanitation and clean water, have been foundational to the improved longevity seen around the world. And vaccines have long been used by the Adventist Church, along with good health practices, and offered protection against many infections and prevented illness and death. So as we witness this global issue, we are encouraging our members to consider responsible immunization and the promotion and development of what is commonly termed herd or community immunity. Notice, we're not mandating it. If governments mandate it on a public health basis, that is something that we've accepted when it comes to not smoking on an airplane. Today, on the airplane, not anyone was smoking. They told if they smoke, they're going to be put in jail. They're going to be fined. That's a mandate. I can't travel in this world for the last 20 or 30 years without my yellow fever immunization certificate. That's a mandate. We follow it. I get in my car, I put my safety belt on. That's a public health mandate. But the church is not mandating. The church leaves the individual the personal choice to make. And so those decisions need to be taken as their choice in consultation with the healthcare provider, personal research, biblical practices, spirit of prophecy, following God's leading in our lives will give us peace. And the latest document on this from the church gives exactly the same principles. So will we agree on the way forward? Interestingly, and there'll be room for this in discussion, I believe, the studies are showing now in the morbidity and mortality weekly reports, studies which have been done here in states where there are significant vaccination rates, that not only does the COVID death rate and complication rate go down where people are vaccinated, when you look at all-cause mortality, taking away COVID itself, it seems as though the vaccinated individuals are doing better in all causes of death as opposed to those who are not. Something which is an interesting finding and really not surprising. But what we need to remember as we go forward together, we are a family. We are a church family. We are brothers and sisters. There are real fears and questions. We need to listen to each other. We need to hear each other. And I plead that we need to be respectful of each other. We should not vilify or stigmatize each other. Someone asked me the question this week. Said, I saw the responses of the church members to something that, to the latest document that was put up. They said to me, are these Seventh-day Adventists who are writing? I said, yes, they are. He said, I couldn't believe it. But I heard the language and the vitriol. No wonder as we live wisely beyond the pandemic. Not only that community immunity is vital if we're to see an end to the pandemic, could it be that responsible immunization may include our responsibility to protect one another and not only ourselves? My prayer is God will bless each one as we make our choices. There are additional recent resources which you can look at, Theological Perspectives by Dr. Jerry Muscala, Spirit of Prophecy Perspectives from the White Estate, the latest affirming statement from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. These are available. And my closing thought is what I pray for each one of you and for myself, that you may prosper in all things, be in health, just as your soul prospers. May the Lord bless you, keep you close to him. We're looking forward to eternity together. Let's live together in peace now. So that will be a joy unutterable. May God bless you as you carefully and thoughtfully ponder the thoughts of this weekend's meetings, is my prayer. Yes, the PowerPoint will be available. I'm not hearing anyone. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we are hearing you, Dr. Landless. I think Dr. Dangle is trying to come on. I don't know if he can be unmuted. Thank you so much for a very powerful, very relevant presentation. But Dr. Daniel, I think, is trying to unmute himself, Dudley. Let me see if I can do this. You should be good, Dr. Daniel.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Landis. That was an awesome presentation and a balanced presentation. And as you spoke, I also searched around to see what was happening and who was listening. And there are people everywhere who are tuned in and are listening. And I want to give a shout out, a word of greeting to the more than 1,100 persons viewing this through the East Jamaica Conference streaming service. Welcome, East Jamaica. Welcome, Jamaica, to this grand event. And I observe that you also have viewers from the United States and Canada, Europe, the Caribbean, and everywhere else. And I also would like to give a special word of welcome also to those who are listening by radio through epalabra.net, epalabra.net, and the more than 1,000 persons following through epalabra.net. Oh, this is awesome. I'd like to let you know that we will also entertain questions. These sessions would be incomplete without questions and answers. So yes, we will have a question and answer session tonight and tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon, because that's the best way to educate and inform people through questions and answers. In fact, I observed that there were some people on one of the streaming services that are asking questions. I want you to know that questions can be submitted. And we have created a special link whereby you can submit.
Nous avons créé un lien où vous pouvez nous faire trouver votre question. L'email c'est 2021 à commercialinteramerica.org. 2021 à commercialinteramerica.org. Envoyez vos questions à ce courriel et nous puissions les répondre. Vous pouvez les envoyer. C'est un plaisir pour moi de vous présenter l'autre conférencier. Il est Dr. Carlos Acaciano. Dr. Carlos Acaciano est professeur de microbiologie, génétique moléculaire et médecine à l'école de médecine de l'Université de Loma Linda. Il a eu sa licence en maîtrise en biologie à l'Université de Porto Rico avant d'avoir son doctorat en microbiologie de l'Université de Californie à Davis. Avant de s'unir à l'Université de Loma Linda en 1997, Dr. Cassiano a eu un entraînement postdoctoral sur auto-immunité et cancer à Scripps Research Institute à Californie. Durant les 20 dernières années, il a dirigé l'école de médecine de l'Université de Loma Linda, un programme de recherche biomédicale avec emphase sur auto-immunité, cancer et disparités de santé. Il est un membre
University
fondateur
Center
du
for
Centre
a Molecular
de
Medicine.
santé et de disparité des
Director.
médecines moléculaires à l'université Loma Linda durant des années. Dr. Cassiano est un conseiller de recherche de plus de 70 entraînements de dans divers champs avec des étudiants
Cassiano has over
de médecine. Dr. Cassiano a publié plus de 100 papiers sur les recherches de biomédicales dans les livres et dans des revues. Il est invité également comme présentateur dans des réunions scientifiques internationales. Il est un consultant de revues de beaucoup d'organisations, incluant l'Institut national de santé et le département de défense des États-Unis.
American Association for Cancer Research, in which he has served in various leadership capacities. Dr. Cassiano has received several awards at Loma Linda University, including the School of Medicine Distinguished Service and Mentor of the Year Awards, and the Hispanic Alumni Community Service Award. And he is a Seventh-day Adventist. Dr. Cassiano, welcome to the Inter-American Division, and welcome to this symposium that focuses on freedom of conscience and the vaccine mandate. God has blessed you and he has enabled you to prepare a presentation that will benefit all of us tonight. We now await that presentation. Welcome, Dr. Cassiano.
Thank you very much, Dr. Daniel. I really appreciate the invitation. Can you hear me? I'm hearing an echo here in my presentation. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we're hearing you.
So thank you very much for the kind introduction. Thank you for the invitation to participate in this symposium. And I would like to send my regards to my brothers and sisters throughout the Inter-American Division, especially to those in my land of Puerto Rico. Saludos a todos mis hermanos y hermanas en la división.
Greetings to all my brothers and sisters of the Inter-American Division, especially Puerto Rico and my brothers in the church, Alto Reyes, Ria Piedras, and Bella Vista in Puerto Rico, where he has been for several years. So I miss you, and I send you greetings from Loma Linda.
Share my presentation, and let me tell you that Dr. Langles did a wonderful job in setting up the topic for this weekend and in preparing the way for the presentation that I'm planning to share with you tonight. So can you see my presentation well? Okay, so this is Loma Linda University, and I am right now in this building here, and outside it looks still a little bit sunny. It's about 4:15, 4:20 here, and it's still afternoon here, but I know it's already evening or nighttime in the Inter-American Division. I'm going to talk about COVID vaccines and immune system, and my presentation is going to be more scientific. As a scientist, I would like to give you an overview of where we are in the pandemic and how the COVID virus, the vaccines, and the immune system interplay. These are some of the topics that I plan to discuss briefly. I'll talk a little bit about the pandemic. Then I'll talk about how the COVID virus, which we call the SARS-CoV-2 virus, modulates the immune system, how the vaccines work, what is their effectiveness and safety record, other medications that are emerging, and briefly the support of church organizations for COVID vaccination. Now, this is where we are right now. This is as today, November 19, 2021. There have been over 250 million cases of COVID around the world, with 5 million deaths and already close to 8 billion doses administered. If you look at the map of the pandemic, most of the cases and deaths right now are in Europe, in the United States, in the Inter-American division, in the South American division, and Southeast Asia. This is where we are today. If you look, for example, at this data here, these are the peaks of the pandemic that we had since the pandemic started last February. We had the first wave that went up slowly, followed by a second wave last summer, which dropped a little bit. It didn't drop completely. Then another wave in last winter, which dropped. Then another wave earlier this summer, which dropped. And we are now, as you can see here, beginning the fourth or the fifth, depending on where you are, wave of COVID. In terms of deaths, this is how it has gone over the last year. We are right here. There is a decrease in the number of deaths compared to previous months, mainly due to vaccination. Now, I call this a pandemic that does not go away, doesn't want to go away. Just today, if you look at the news today, COVID in Germany, Bavaria is canceling all the Christmas markets. Germany is now ruling out a lockdown, even for the vaccinated. I was in Germany in September, giving a talk at the Autoimmunity and COVID Symposium in the city of Dresden. At the time, there were 5,000 cases in the whole country in September. Yesterday, there were 65,000 cases in the country and climbing exponentially. Record number of cases now coming up in Europe, also in the United States, all the cold countries where the weather is getting very cold and people are beginning to congregate inside their homes, inside restaurants, inside offices, inside bars, vaccinated, non-vaccinated people together. Now the virus is spreading fast, particularly among the unvaccinated population. And some people are beginning to ask the question, is this the pandemic for the unvaccinated? And the reason for that question is that over 90% of the cases that we're seeing today and over 95% of the hospitalizations that we're beginning to see are among unvaccinated people. Now, what about breakthrough cases? What about the people who were vaccinated and now are getting sick? I'm going to discuss that issue in a few minutes if you are patient enough to listen to my presentation. But the reality is that we are now entering the fourth or the fifth wave of COVID, which appear to be disastrous, particularly for the population that has not been vaccinated. Now, how is COVID doing in the Inter-American Division? And you can see here the map of the Inter-American Division. And as of this week, these are the total number of cases in the different countries of the Inter-American Division. This is the total number of deaths, and Mexico and Colombia lead the division in terms of total number of cases and total number of deaths. Of course, these are the two biggest countries, therefore they have the larger number of cases and deaths. And then at the end, you see here Puerto Rico, Salvador, and Jamaica with less cases, less death, but keep in mind that Puerto Rico, El Salvador, and Jamaica are small countries. Their population is much smaller than that of Colombia, Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras. So proportionally to the population in these islands, the number of cases are still high. And right now, the number of deaths in Puerto Rico, Jamaica, El Salvador, and other countries is due mainly to unvaccination. Most of the people that are dying are the unvaccinated people. Now, if you look at the most deadly pandemics of the past 100 years, you see at the top the Spanish flu from 1918 to 1920, lasted a couple of years. Remember, at that time, there were no vaccines for flu, there were no antibiotics, there were no medication. We didn't have the modern medicine that we have today. So about 20 to 50 million people perished during those 2 years of the Spanish flu. Then you have the HIV/AIDS pandemic that started in 1981 and still continues, has killed between 32 to 33.6 million people in over 30 years. But look at COVID-19, is number 3 among the most deadly pandemics of the past 100 years. 5 million deaths and growing. At the end of the day, when we say that we passed this pandemic, the death toll could easily surpass over 10, 15 million, even when we have now modern medicine, when we have the technologies to fight this virus. And then we have the Asian flu from the 1950s, the Hong Kong flu from the 1960s, and the swine flu from 2009 to present, which has only killed 200,000 people, which is a large number, but not as large compared to the other pandemics. So COVID-19 is going to pass into history as one of the most deadly pandemics of the 20th and 21st centuries. Now let's talk about coronaviruses. This is a type of virus that is very common, and coronaviruses cause a lot of the common colds that we suffer. If you have been having a lot of colds in your life, it's because of rhinoviruses or coronaviruses. Now, there are 3 types of coronaviruses that are called the SARS or MERS coronaviruses. These are the ones that cause severe acute respiratory syndrome. The SARS-1, which came up in 2003, killed about 8,000 people around the world, and that's not a lot compared to COVID-2. But this virus was killing about 10% of the people that infected compared to the COVID-19 that is killing about 2%, 2 out of 100. And then you had the MERS, the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, that came up in 2012, and the SARS-CoV-2. This is the one that causes COVID-19. Now, why are they called coronaviruses? And the reason is that around this virus, there are spikes that form the shape of a crown. And that's why they're called the corona. Corona is the word in Spanish for crown, coronaviruses. If you look at the flu virus, also has spikes, but it's a different type of spike. So the flu immunization works very well for flu because it targets the spikes of the flu virus, but the flu immunization, it doesn't work for the coronavirus because is a different type of spike. So you need to have an immunization that is specific for the spike proteins in the coronavirus. It is very easy to get infected with the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Actually, here you have a COVID-infected person that doesn't have a mask, is not wearing a mask, but is infecting. This person is shedding the virus, and this virus can travel up to 30 feet and infect a person that is about 30 feet away, especially in a closed environment like a restaurant, like a church, like a house, office, or a place where there is not a lot of ventilation. Outside, if there is a crowd and everyone is standing together, yes, you can have also transmission, but outside with the wind blowing and the sunshine, chances of transmission at this distance is pretty low. Here we have an infected asymptomatic person that is talking to two healthy people. One of them is wearing a mask. This person will be mostly protected. This person is not going to be protected, and this person is going to catch the virus. So if you are in a household, because it's cold, you live in North America, you live in Europe, and you are cold, and you spend the time with your family inside the house, and let's say there's 7 of you, 6 are vaccinated, 1 is not vaccinated. The person that is not vaccinated can get infected, can pass the virus to the vaccinated, which will be protected unless they have waning immunity. And I'll talk about waning immunity in a few moments. But in that household, there are several people that are unvaccinated. It takes only one person that is infected to pass the virus to the rest of the unvaccinated members of the family. Now, why do we have so many COVID variants? The reason we have so many COVID variants is because first, the virus mutates constantly, is changing constantly. And second, there are too many infections and too little vaccination. And there are right now 4 major variants that are circulating. These are variants of the original. The original started in Wuhan in China. That's where it first appeared. Whether it came from a market or the lab, we don't know. But the reality is that that variant gave rise to 4 additional variants: the Alpha that came from England, the Beta that came from South Africa, the Delta that came from India, the Gamma that came from Brazil. The Delta is the one that is dominant right now. And there are other variants that are coming from the Delta. But why these variants arise? How do they arise? And I want you to take a look at this slide. This is a virus that is approaching a cell in our body. The virus just doesn't penetrate the cells naturally. It needs to bind receptors in our cells for the virus to attach to our cells through those receptors and then become internalized. So the spikes of the virus, which are in the membrane, in the surface of the virus, they form complexes. They interact with 2 receptors that are located in the surface of our cells, our tissues, and those are called the ACE2 receptor and the TMPRSS2 receptor. So for the virus to infect us, we need to have those 2 receptors. And I can tell you that the presence of those receptors in our body is independent of our immune status. We can have a weak immune system, or we can have a strong immune system. But whether we have these receptors or not doesn't depend on our immune system. It depends on our genes. A lot of us express high amounts, high levels of these receptors. Other people express low levels of these receptors. Those who express high levels of these receptors tend to develop more severe disease. Those who express low levels of these receptors tend to express less severe disease. Now, these 2 receptors are regulated by a hormone called androgen. This is the androgen. We know that hormone as testosterone. Men that have high levels of androgen suffer from a condition that is called allogenetic alopecia, where they lose hair early in their 30s. They have a lot of body hair, they lose hair early in the 30s. Studies have shown that men who suffer from androgenetic alopecia may suffer more severe disease than men who don't have that condition. Now, how about women? Women who have high levels of androgen, then they tend to have polycystic ovary syndrome, where they have susceptibility to develop cysts in the ovary. Women that have that condition also tend to have more severe disease. The same with people who are obese, the same with people who are immunocompromised, the same with people who have diabetes that is uncontrolled. So the ability of the virus to penetrate the body doesn't depend much on the strength of our immune system, but it depends on the receptors that we have in our body. Once the virus penetrates the immune system, the virus releases its genetic material, start reproducing, and then is released in our body. If we are not immunized, we're gonna carry lots of viral particles in our body, and then we're gonna pass those to other people who are not immunized, who will pass it to other people who are not immunized. And this creates an incubator for the virus to constantly change. The more bodies the virus finds, the greater the chance that the virus is going to change and mutate. The less bodies, the less the virus is going to mutate. So how do we control this? Via immunization. The more immunization, less viral particles circulating, less variants. The less immunization, more viral particles circulating, more variants because of the mutations that are happening in the virus. Now, how does our immune system respond to a foreign infectious agent like the COVID virus or any other microbe? Well, let's suppose that you go into your backyard and accidentally you get a nail stuck in your foot. What is going to happen is that there's some cells in our skin, they're called dendritic cells or phagocytic cells. What they're going to do is they're going to take up the bacteria that is in that nail. They're going to take those bacteria to the lymph nodes, and they're going to expose those bacterial or microbial products to the lymph nodes, and particularly to the T cells in the lymph node. And T cells are type of white blood cells, which are then going to start activating the immune system, activate B cells, and the B cells are going to make antibodies. And then the immune system is going to react to these bacteria. But there is a problem, that the immune system takes about 2 to 3 weeks to mount a very strong response to that microbe. But if that microbe is Clostridium tetanus, which is a bacteria that produces tetanus, within 3 or 4 days, you may be dead because of the toxin that is there. So the immune system is not going to have enough time to fight this microbe. That's why we have a tetanus vaccine. So when you get a nail stuck in your foot, you immediately go to the emergency room or to urgent care to get the tetanus shot. And the reason is to protect you, because the immune system is going to react against the bacteria and is going to protect you, but it will take 2 to 3 weeks to do that protection. In the meantime, you need that vaccination. And the same thing happened with the COVID virus. Your immune system eventually is going to react against the virus, but it will take 2 to 3 weeks to react. And by that time, the virus will overtake your body, hyperactivate your immune system, leading to a heightened state of inflammation that can kill you, in addition to all the body damage that you are going to have. Vaccines may not prevent the attack by the bacteria or virus, but what the vaccines do is they prevent severe disease. They prevent the death from the infection. If you're vaccinated, you may be infected with the virus. You may feel a little bit rare, a little bit strange, but the vaccine is going to protect you against severe disease. And it's going to protect you against death from the infection. That's why we have vaccines against polio, rabies, smallpox, measles, tetanus, and whooping cough. We have eradicated a lot of these diseases because of vaccines. If we leave the immune system to fight these diseases, eventually we may fight it and we may win, but the great majority of us are going to lose the battle, because by the time the immune system is activated, we already lost the war. So how does the immune system respond to viruses? So suppose that we get infected with the COVID virus or with the flu virus. What is going to happen is that phagocytic cells are going to start picking up this virus, are going to start to tear them apart, are going to present them to T cells. These white blood cells, T cells, are the master regulators of the immune system. They're going to activate B cells. They're going to also activate other phagocytic cells. And these B cells are going to start making antibodies that will react against the spike protein in the virus, and these antibodies will neutralize the virus. Or the antibodies, if you get infected with the flu virus, are going to also react with the spike protein in the flu virus, and it will take care of the infection. But as I said, this process is not instantaneous. It takes 2 to 3 weeks for this response to mount the first time. The second time that you are exposed to the virus, 6-7 months later, the process is much shorter. It takes 3 days to a week. Now, during this process of activation of the immune system releases into the body what we call inflammatory cytokines. In order to fight an infectious agent, the immune system has to activate inflammation. It has to enhance inflammation, because inflammation allows the white blood cells to work and do their job. What the COVID virus does is that it promotes a hyperactivation of inflammation, so that then you develop what is called a cytokine storm, where the virus is inducing your immune system to basically build or produce a cytokine storm that is going to inflame your whole body, and it may kill you. And a lot of the people who are dying of COVID are dying because of pulmonary insufficiency due to high state of inflammation, or damage to other organs because of this cytokine storm. So the COVID-19 virus is going to destroy your internal organs if you get infected. It's going to destroy your lungs, your liver, your kidneys, intestines, your brain, your eyes, your nose. Now you may say, well, I had COVID and I had moderate disease. Well, maybe you're not expressing a lot of ACE2 and TMP receptors, and you may have a strong immune system. But you may also have a strong immune system, and the virus will take that to its advantage by enhancing inflammation and enhancing this cytokine storm that can lead to multi-organ failure. So COVID may kill us, but if we survive moderate to severe disease, we may suffer the consequences for a long time. And now we're beginning to see what we call the long COVID, the long-lasting consequences of COVID, which include acute respiratory distress, pulmonary deficiency, chronic fatigue, autoimmune conditions. And the meeting I went to in Germany, for 5 days, we were studying how COVID induces autoimmune conditions in people who survive. And these conditions so far last 6, 7, 8 months. We don't know down the road how long these conditions are going to last. Brain fog, vascular disease, thrombosis, heart problems, sleep problems, headaches, dizziness, mood changes, abortion due to placental insufficiency caused by the infection. So if we survive COVID, we're going to start looking at many months, if not years, of suffering from these symptoms. If we are vaccinated, these symptoms may not develop. So let's take a look at the COVID vaccines. And there are several COVID vaccines that have been produced. The ones that have been distributed the most are the Oxford AstraZeneca, Moderna, Pfizer BioNTech, the Sputnik in Russia, the Sinovac in China, Novavax is underway, could be a game changer, and the Janssen also in Europe. And there are different types of vaccines. Some of the vaccines use the whole virus and is attenuated, and it is used to get to make a vaccine and induce an immune response. For example, the measles vaccine and the zoster vaccine, also the flu, the polio, the rabies, the tetanus, diphtheria vaccines, they use live or attenuated virus or bacteria. Or you can have subunits of the virus, the hepatitis B, the shingles virus vaccines use subunits of these viruses. Or you have messenger RNA, which is just one small chain of messenger RNA. And these are the vaccines that are being generated for COVID and Ebola. Now, some people say that they don't trust the messenger RNA vaccines because they're too new and we don't know what is in there. Well, actually, they're not new and we do know what is in there. These vaccines, the early studies for these vaccines started in the late 1980s. And companies and universities started working on messenger RNA vaccines in the 1990s. However, the vaccines, these early vaccines, were producing inflammation. It wasn't until 2005 when this scientist, Kathleen Carrico, working at BioNTech, the company that is partnering with Pfizer to develop the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. In 2005, she made the discovery that was able to overcome that inflammation induced by the messenger RNA vaccines. And that opened the door for the production of safe messenger RNA vaccines that immediately began to be used in clinical trials in 2010 for HIV, rabies, Zika virus, and flu. Now, when COVID came up in 2020, 2001, this platform was ready to go. It had been developed for about 15 years and it was ready to go. Then the United States and Europe pumped billions of dollars into the companies that produce these vaccines for them to accelerate the process. So the platform had been there for 15 years. It just needed the financial backing to be developed within a year. And that's why we had these rapidly made vaccines. But they didn't come out of nowhere. They came after 30 years of study and 15 years of breakthroughs. What the vaccine does is that it injects the messenger RNA of the spike protein that goes into the cell. Our human cells start making the spike protein, but it's only the spike protein. And some people say, well, if we make the spike protein, we get sick. No, the spike protein is needed by the virus to enter the cells. And once the virus enters the cells, that's what causes the damage, not the spike protein. So our cells can produce spike protein by itself and nothing happens. So when the spike proteins are produced by the cells, the immune system immediately recognizes them as foreign and mounts a response. First, a T cell response, then a B cell response that produces antibodies to this spike protein. And those antibodies last for several months. We now are beginning to see that those of us who got vaccinated in December last year, we need a booster now. Why? Because these antibodies last between 6 to 8 months, and now we need another booster to boost our immune system to keep producing antibodies to the spike protein. Now, the effectiveness of the COVID vaccine have been already tested in multiple studies. Let me give you a couple of examples. This is a study from Wisconsin, very recently published. In people who were fully vaccinated, you had 125 cases per 100,000, only 5 hospitalizations, and 0.1 deaths in people who were vaccinated. And then you're going to say, oh, but people who get vaccinated may die. Well, what happened is that if you vaccinate hundreds of thousands of people and 1 or 2 of them die days after the vaccine, you don't know if that person died because of the vaccine. It's possible that that person was going to die anyway of something else. So we don't know that. But look at the death rate, 0.1. Now, if you look at the people who have not been fully vaccinated, the number of cases is almost triple. The hospitalization is 3 to 4 times, and the number of deaths is 10 times higher than the fully vaccinated people. Very similar results in Indiana. You have unvaccinated versus vaccinated people. The number of cases in unvaccinated, over 97%. In the vaccinated, only about 2%. Number of deaths in the unvaccinated, it was pretty high in this particular study. Among the vaccinated, less than 2%, as you can see here. So, and these studies have been confirmed. Here in the United States, there is a study that came up in the New England Journal of Medicine that showed that the Moderna and Pfizer vaccine, at least for the first 6 to 8 months, they provide over 90% protection against severe disease and death. 1 dose, maybe 60, 70% protection. With 2 doses, over 90%. Another study from England showed the same pattern. Another study from the Centers for Disease Control, the same pattern. If you get vaccinated, you have about 90% or more protection against severe disease and death. If you don't get vaccinated, you don't have that protection. Now, what we're seeing now is that some people are beginning to develop infection and in some cases hospitalization, even when they are vaccinated. And this is a very small number compared to the unvaccinated population. What happened is that, let's suppose, and this is my case, I got my first dose in December last year and the second dose in January. So early on, I had a very strong response. But look at what happens 6 months later. The antibody response starts to go down. I still have good T cells. I have T cells in memory. So the immune system is still working, but the antibody response started coming down. So now I need a booster to keep that response going again. We don't know going down the road if the booster is going to protect us for a long time or in 6 to 8 months away or another year, we will need another booster, like the flu shot that we need to take one at least once a year. So this is still to be seen, but at least we're getting protection. If you look at the number of breakthrough infection, there is a minority of infections among the vaccinated people, but among the unvaccinated, more than 90% of them, those are the ones that are currently being infected and hospitalized. So the vaccine is doing its job, is protecting, but down the road, we may have to take annual boosters or maybe a booster every 6 months until we find a permanent cure. So how this protection compares to other vaccines? Well, if you look at the protection given by the flu vaccine, even when we take once a year, it's only about 44% protection. The AstraZeneca COVID vaccine, about 70%, the chickenpox vaccine, 92%, the Moderna and Pfizer, during the first 6 months, about 95%. After that, it started coming down, so we need a booster. The measles vaccine, about 97%, and the polio vaccine, 99%. But look at this, to get that 99% protection for polio, you need about 4 doses. You need boosters to get protected against polio. And I predict that the same thing is going to happen with COVID. Now, what are the effects of COVID vaccine versus the effect of COVID infection? Let's look at the vaccine. When you get the vaccine, you have side effects. All the vaccines have side effects. And you have drowsiness, chills, pain, headache, muscle pain, nausea, heat, fatigue. These side effects usually go away within 3 to 4 days. Now, how about other more serious effects? Anaphylaxis, allergic reaction, 2 to 5 per million. Thrombotic events, especially with the Janssen vaccine, 3 to 4 per million. Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a debilitating syndrome produced by the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, 20 per million. And then myocarditis, pericarditis, this heart condition that is temporary, but is serious but temporary, produced by the Pfizer Moderna vaccine, 100 per million, mostly in the ages of 12 to 29. Now, how about COVID infection? Look at this number. The chances of dying from COVID is 2 in 100. Out of 100 people who get sick with COVID, 2 die, and over 50% have prolonged side effects that include neurologic effects, renal kidney effects, liver effects, gastrointestinal effects, thrombotic effects, cardiac effects, endocrine effects, dermatological side effects that may last for a long time. This lasts for a few days. This could be corrected with medication. Some are moderate, most of them are temporary. These ones, the COVID infection, they may last for months, and who knows if they will last for years. There's some myths about the COVID vaccine that have been already debunked, and I can assure you as a scientist that the COVID vaccines do not contain tracking microchips. They do not contain magnets. They don't have foreign DNA that can alter yours. They don't have live virus that can infect you. They don't have microparticles that can cause autism or autoimmune disease. They don't have heavy metals as mercury or aluminum. They don't have carcinogens. They don't have eggs or animal products. Definitely, they don't have fetal tissues. That's not true. And yeah, they don't have the mark of the beast. What do they have? Because some people ask me, but we don't know what is in the vaccines. We do know what is in the vaccines. Actually, the Centers for Disease Control has published a table with the details of the ingredients in the vaccines. And this is what the vaccines contain. The vaccines have the messenger RNA that codes for the spike protein or an attenuated virus. It has lipids. These are fats, small droplets of fats. We call them fat nanoparticles. And when people hear the word nanoparticles, they immediately think science fiction and all these nanoparticles are used in movies to change behavior. Now, these are lipid nanoparticles that are composed of polyethylene glycol-based lipids. And we consume polyethylene glycol in many of the foods that we prepare. If you had a muffin today, if you had a cookie today, if you had cake today, or you're planning to have it tomorrow for dessert after lunch, that cookie, that muffin, that soda drink, that cake, that seasoning that you're using has polyethylene glycol, is a safe ingredient in a lot of the foods that we consume that has been shown to be inert unless you use it at extremely high amounts but the amounts that we have in food products and in vaccines are only traces and is basically doesn't do anything to the body. There are traces of cholesterol, acetic acid, vinegar, acid stabilizers, sugar, and salts. That's what is in the virus. These lipid droplets, they look like this under the microscope, and you have the messenger RNA inside here. Why do we need these fat microparticles? So that they can attach to the cell, allow the messenger RNA to go inside our cells so the cells produce the spike protein and the immune system is stimulated then to attack the virus. So we do know what is in the vaccines, and it's none of the other things that I mentioned in my previous slide. There are other medications that have been developed and that are emerging. We have remdesivir, which is an antiviral drug, dexamethasone, an anti-inflammatory drug, Regeneron, which is an antibody that is injected when the person is beginning to have severe disease. And very recently, Pfizer and Merck developed new antiviral pills that could be game changer, because instead of an injection, you just take a pill and you get protected. However, all these medications are mostly for hospitalized patients, people who already get the disease. They cannot prevent the disease. They can help treat the disease, but they cannot prevent. They are recommended. How about vitamins and supplements? Well, some vitamins and supplements can help. As Dr. Langless mentioned, vitamin D is very important. Zinc is very important. Vitamin A is very important. But they alone cannot protect you against COVID. They help boost your immune system, but they alone cannot protect, because remember, COVID manipulates your immune system to its advantage, creating that immune hyperactivation leading to the cytokine storm. About hydroxychloroquine, chloroquine, lopinavir, ivermectin, they don't work. A lot of clinical studies are being conducted. Most of them are revealing that they don't work. So Loma Linda strongly supports COVID vaccination. We had a very strong vaccination effort for the community that provided vaccination for the whole university and our community. The governor of California came to visit. He was very impressed by what he saw. And if you look at the website at Loma Linda, you're going to see the recommendations on COVID. Advent Health, the biggest health organization in the Eastern United States, strongly supports COVID vaccination. Adventist Health in the west of the United States strongly supports COVID vaccination. Adventist Healthcare strongly supports COVID vaccination. And the SDA Church at Dr. Langley's show supports in the 2015 statement, and in the more recent statement also support COVID vaccination. It's up to the individual conscience, it's up to the individual, but the church supports vaccination. So together we can stop COVID suffering. We can stop the deaths by getting vaccinated, using protective face masks, using masks and social distancing, washing our hands, because soap will destroy the virus, keeping distance. And when we have the family gatherings, like we had in my family last winter, we had our gathering in the backyard. Everyone was wearing the mask. That was before we got vaccinated. We're still careful, but we need to continue saving lives. And I encourage all of you to join us in saving lives. Get vaccinated and save not only your life, but the life of your loved ones and the life of the church members and the lives of those who are going to be near you, wherever you go in society. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you also, Dr. Castellano, for your very profound and informative presentation rooted in the science. Rooted. And so we appreciate that presentation of yours. We're going to quickly go to our next session, which is a Q&A. However, before I get there, permit me to repeat what I said earlier in my introductory remarks. I know that there are some persons who want to express their views, and they do have the right to do that. But we also did say at the very start that we are to respect each other. And some comments I understand that are on a particular chat seems to be of concern to some persons who are on the chat themselves. We need to exercise charity to one another. And that's the heart of the gospel. Heart of the gospel. Jesus calls us to love one another. And at all times, we must remember that we are witnessing for Christ, wherever we may be at any moment. And remember that the angels of heaven are keeping record. The angels of heaven are keeping record. And I repeat again that name calling and shaming are not helpful. And Gospel Workers, page 121 says, a kind, courteous Christian is the most powerful argument that can be produced in favor of Christianity. Let your words, your comments tonight and throughout this weekend on this program demonstrate that you are witnessing for Christ. So now we will have the question and answer session. And my assistant, Sister Dulcie Rice, may have some questions. But I want to present a question that came directly to me. And the question is, after you have gotten COVID, do you still need to be vaccinated? I believe, Dr. Castellano, that question is directed to you.
It depends on when you got COVID. If you got COVID recently, within the last 6-7 months, maybe you still have immunity, and we haven't determined yet in science how long that immunity lasts. However, there are some reports indicating that people who had COVID 6 to 7 months ago are beginning to see their antibody levels to go down, which mimics the same observation in people who had the vaccine 6 to 8 months ago. So the recommendation is that if you had COVID 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, you may still have some protection. After 6 to 8 months, your protection is start to go down. You still have T-cell protection, but the B-cell protection, which is the one that produces the antibodies against the spike protein, may start to wane, both with infection and with vaccine after 6 to 8 months.
Thank you for that response. Thank you for that response. And Sister Dulcie Rice, I permit you to present a question at this time.
Dr. Genius has the questions.
Okay, Dr. Genius.
Hello, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Pastor Daniel, good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Genius.
We would like not only to thank you, but also to thank all the presenters who presented clearly the accounts, the scientific accounts around the issue of COVID and the vaccinations. As a matter of fact, I can tell you that what I did, I was in all 3 languages on YouTube, recording all comments and questions that came out from this chat room. Sister Dulce sent me one question. If you have others, you can send to me. But Pastor Daniel, I can tell you, among the conversations, the communications that we have on the three YouTube channels, we have over 100 comments in French, over 200 in Spanish, and 150 or more in English. Obviously, most of the comments that we have are not questions. They are mostly comments, and many of them are repetitive. However, I can say that I would like to propose to you, I mean, there are some questions that we can ask right now. Many of the comments and questions are very interesting. Many others are maybe just personal comments or personal ideas and views that are shared with us. I would like to propose that we take time to take these questions and summarize them and answer them in the panel tomorrow afternoon, because it is really a lot of questions that are asked. I mean, lots of comments, most exactly. There are very few questions. I'm not sure we have 20 or 10 or 20 questions out of this. However, also many, if not most of the questions also have been answered already by the two presenters. One of the questions was, it was not a question, it was comments. Many comments said that we have accounts of millions, not millions, thousands of people that died after taking COVID vaccines. How do you explain that? I believe Dr. Cassiano will help us with this question. And there is another very interesting question who says that there is a confusion. They wanted to know whether or not the church, I don't know if Dr. Landless is still there, they would like to know whether or not the church support mandatory vaccine or not, because Dr. Landless say that we are not making in the church the vaccines to be mandatory for our members, and at the same time, he was talking about mandatory vaccines in other countries. So the person says that he is confused and he would like to have a clarification whether or not the church support mandatory vaccine.
I'd like to.
I will let you with these two questions for now.
I'd like to clarify that right off, Dr. Ginez, because I saw that question, and I think there's a confusion not on what the church does, but it's a confusion in the understanding of what we're saying. Mandates on public health are not made by the church. These are made by governments and by jurisdictions. And when a mandate is in favor of public health and well-being, the church, as was stated in the statement which the brother refers to, it's Brother Edmund Neil Quiros, refers to the statement or to the document of the church, which again points out, both in the same document, that the church can support the mandates that relate to public health measures to improve and to benefit the health of the people. Why the church points out the issue of individual choices. For example, the church has not mandated that if you eat meat, you cannot be a Seventh-day Adventist. It's recommended not to. It's recommended to have a balanced vegetarian diet. It is what we believe and what I believe the spirit of prophecy is clear on, and the Adventist health studies, not only here in the United States, but we're seeing studies in other parts of the world showing the benefits of that diet. But it's not mandated. We believe it. We recommend it. But we don't mandate. Now, when authorities and jurisdictions mandate a practice, for example, yellow fever vaccination, we do it. Those who don't do it can say, well, I am not going to do it. We will not say you cannot be a Seventh-day Adventist church member if you don't do it. But you have to deal with the authorities when you disobey their mandate, because the mandate is not an unreasonable one. So that's the difference. The church is not making the mandates. The church is strongly recommending the healthful reasons for doing immunization in general and COVID-19 in specific. But the choice is given. At the same time, the refusal to take it should not be viewed as a religious reason for not taking it.
Yeah.
Because the church does not view that as a religious issue per se.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Landless. Dr. Cassiano, before you answer your questions, let me add to what Dr. Landless said very quickly. There is a phrase that he used to say. I was hoping that he would say that. He usually said that the church is not a public health agency. So this is not the role of the church to mandate or not to mandate, but the church can actually give his statement, his point of view on a mandate that is made by public health authorities, etc. Dr. Cassiano.
Yes, the question was, there are reports that people have died after taking the vaccine. And we need to look at this from the perspective of what the science says, what the data says. Because if you look at the recent data published by the CDC last month, precisely about this issue, they look at the number of vaccine doses that have been administered up to October of this year. And at that time, there were 450 million doses. They look at the number of people who died after receiving the vaccine, days, weeks after receiving the vaccines, 9,000. That's 0.0022. And then they ask the question, did these people die because of the vaccine? Or did these people die because that's the normal death rate after any vaccine that people take? Or that's the normal death rate that you take within that period? And after they did the comparisons, they found that the number of people who died after receiving the vaccine was the same number of people who died normally within that number of days or weeks after receiving any vaccine, any medication, or during a normal period of time. And the CDC concluded that the vaccine doesn't increase the risk of death. Now, having said that, there have been a few well-documented cases, very few well-documented cases of people who had a thrombotic event after taking the vaccine. As I mentioned before, people who took the Janssen & Janssen vaccine, there were 2 to 5 people per million who had thrombotic event, who had an anaphylactic reaction or had myocarditis and died. If we look at the flu vaccine, at the tetanus vaccine, at the polio vaccine, any vaccine, there's always going to be a very small number of people who are going to die after the vaccine, maybe 1 in a million, 2 in a million, 3 in a million, 10 in a million, because of a reaction to the vaccine. So we're talking a few people in a million. So there is some risk. Now, what is the risk of dying of COVID infection? 2 in 100. Those are the 2 numbers that we need to look at. 2 in 100 for COVID infection, 2 to 10 in a million for vaccination. We need to put those 2 in the balance when making this individual decision.
Okay, thank you so very much, Dr. Cassiano. Maybe I can add in what you said that you are trying to explain to us that people die every day. Sometimes it's very difficult for people to understand when we say that they, whether or not these people that received the COVID vaccine, whether or not they died because of the vaccine. I know when we are making a presentation that is a general public presentation, sometimes it's not necessarily helpful to talk about numbers, but sometimes it's important to think around numbers. Maybe I can share with our followers, with people that are participating in this program, that 164,000 people die every day on this earth. Every single day, 160,000 people died, which means that you can have one person that took the vaccine and then the day after and another day after, etc., experience a casualty. That this does not mean that it is because of the vaccine. This is true that not too long ago, there had been on the social networks a message that was aired out and say that several thousands of people died because they received the COVID vaccines. I would encourage everybody, when you have this type of information, when we have any kind of information, is to cross-match this information with other information coming from reliable sources such as universities, such as people that are making their business, their profession is to investigate these kind of things. Just look what do they say about this. And I said it because there is another comment here that said, and again, it's too many, and also there are questions and comments. I know that in the presentations of tomorrow, there are many of these questions that will be answered. And again, Pastor Daniel, I would like you to tell me whether or not it is something that will be possible tomorrow afternoon in the panel. But let me just add to this before you answer. There is one comment in the chat, in one of the chat in YouTube, saying that there are several comments, but altogether it gives this that doctors do not investigate. They are not researchers. They just are repeating what the government are saying or what the other institutions are saying. I have the feeling that Dr. Landless would like to answer to that. And let me just, it's over to you, Dr. Landless.
Well, I'm sure Dr. Cassiano is going to have something to say.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
He is a researcher. He's a recognized researcher. And I really wish the church to understand. I don't tout or advertise my own qualifications and background. I come from a background of academic medicine, research, 3 specialties: family medicine, internal medicine, cardiology, and a number of professorships. So we don't just listen and mimic. We are not parrots. We read, we look, and we're not reading what the government says. Mm-hmm. We are reading what scientific literature around the world is saying. And Dr. Cassiano was invited to speak in Germany, not because he reads other people's work and presents it in another country. He presents original research. He presents work that is ongoing, that is cutting edge. Now, what I do want to share as well is that the work that has been done in preparing and advising the church, whether it be related to this public health issue or other health issues in our hospitals, in settings, in various situations, we do not rely purely on what we ourselves as individuals bring to the table. We look at our flagship institutions, including Loma Linda, Montemorelos. We have research going on in River Plate. We have work which is being done through our counterparts right here in the CDC. We have consultations and individuals who consult with us, and Dr. Janaz, you heard one of them speak, Dr. Wilbur Chen.
Absolutely.
who is a leading researcher in this, who is a Christian, a committed Christian, who shares the facts as they are from original research. So I would urge that our church members understand the issue of outliers. And that will need to be translated carefully, because there are people who believe in the mainstream, that's the majority, and then you'll have those who are the outliers. Sadly, with COVID-19 and many other issues where we're seeing extreme opinions in health, not only are they outliers, they are outright liars. The stories that are being presented on all these people who are said to be dying from the vaccine, that is an outright lie. And when you look at 7.6 billion vaccines have been administered, and Dr. Cassiano gave a very important analysis of 0.0022 deaths percent. I mean, if this vaccine was causing as many deaths as people are saying, we would have seen a tremendous spike in deaths. So we need to be reasonable and not be carried along with the fears and the hype and the stories that have been told. So I just wanted to add that point, that the presentation, for example, Dr. Cassiano gave, is not based on mere reading. It's personal research and hands-on work, as much of the other work that we've presented to the church.
Yeah, I would like to comment on the issue that doctors listen to the government. It's the other way around. Government listens to the scientists and the doctors, because the scientists and the doctors are the ones who make the original observations, whether it's in the clinic, whether it's in the hospital, whether it's in the community, or in the lab. And when that knowledge is put out in publications, scientific medical publications, when that knowledge is transmitted to the public health offices, local, regional, state, national offices, that's when the government starts paying attention. That's when the government starts collecting all this data. And we have agencies such as the National Institute of Health, the Centers for Disease Control, the Department of Health Services, the state and city and county departments of health that start looking at the data that is coming from the hospitals, that is coming from the doctor's offices, that is coming from the scientific research. And that's how they create a picture of what is going on. This data on the number of cases of COVID that we have, the number of deaths, is being collected by Johns Hopkins University and other data collection sites based on reports from hospitals, based on reports from agencies. And then based on the data, then the government start looking at what is going on and begin consulting with physicians, with scientists to come up with policies for the benefit of society. So doctors don't listen to the government, government listens to doctors. It's the other way around.
Thank you, Dr. Cassiano.
And where the governments have not listened to the doctors, you have seen the devastation that occurs.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Rentes.
Permit me.
Yeah.
Dr. Genius, permit me to ask this question, which has been coming. Could it be that a part of the problem why many folks are refusing to take the vaccine is because they're also health professionals who are giving a message contrary to what the mainstream medical research is presenting? Are doctors also outliers?
Okay. I don't know whom of our panelists would like to answer. Dr. Lendles?
Dr. Landis, yes.
Yes, you will find that there are outliers in that too. Yes, absolutely. You will find that in the main, for example, if you look at where in what situations vaccines have been the most readily accepted, it's among the medical profession that have embraced it the most. You will find, however, that there are, and we know that right now, fueling the fears within the church, there are physicians doing exactly that. And just interestingly, there's a current debate going on right now. One of those who has been vehemently promoting ivermectin, for example, and using it himself, has just recently had COVID, and continues to say, well, the reason that he got COVID using ivermectin because we've got to increase the dosage. Well, you know, when people get COVID after getting the vaccine, they say the vaccine's a failure. But an individual promoting ivermectin, who is a physician himself, when it gets a breakthrough and he himself gets the COVID, says, well, it was just the dose that wasn't adequate. Yes, there are outliers. But when you look at mainstream medicine throughout the world, has accepted and is embracing the importance of the vaccine because it's a proven track record.
Okay.
So yes, there are outliers.
Thank you. Dr. Landis, allow me to add two or three things. And this is very interesting as a question. As a matter of fact, you need to know that in the scientific arena, this is normal for scientists to be in disagreement with other scientists. This is actually the normal life in science. The difference right now is that right now it is out in the posts, in the social network, etc. And the general public is not very much accustomed to hear scientists arguing, debating, being in disagreement with other scientists, and this is what brings the confusion. Yes, it is true that some scientists are against the strategies, the mainstream strategies, but it is heavily accepted as a scientific basis that these vaccines, this strategy are the strategy that we need to go. I'm trying to not to say too much because tomorrow I will be having a presentation about, my presentation will be less clinical, will be more public health aspects and everything that has to see in terms of communication, and many of the whys that are asking here, I will try to address them tomorrow. So that's why there are things that I would like not to say right now, but just talking about I'm coming back a little bit about the idea of we are repeating what the government says. And I'm very happy Dr. Cassiano pinpoint and highlighted the fact that, as a matter of fact, clinics, hospitals, doctors are the one producing the information, producing the data that you see, numbers that you see are not fabricated by government. They are data that are collected in institutions. Dr. Landis said not too long ago that I'm not going to say which are my background, etc., because we are talking here between physicians and scientific-minded person. But there are many things, and this is very difficult for us sometimes to explain this. But for instance, myself, I'm a medical doctor, but overall, I was leading a healthcare institution in 2020 in Haiti as the chief medical officer. There are many things about COVID vaccine that I live directly, that I can tell you that directly, this is what it is, this is what it is not. And even more than that, right now, as the director for health department in the Inter-American Division, it's even more, 35 institutions in 12 countries in the Inter-American Division are under my supervision. And I can tell you that all of them are delivering, vaccinating people, as much people as possible. And I can also tell you, as former director, medical director of a hospital, but also here now as the president of the health system in the Inter-American Division, We can tell you in all our institutions, people that are coming in the institutions with COVID, most of them, it is exceptional to have people that was vaccinated. This is fact. This is not something that people paid me to say. I can tell you in these institutions, people that are vaccinated, it is very, very rare that you see these people coming back again for this. And also we can say in these institutions, you can see the curves of people coming for COVID decreasing drastically. Therefore, we are trying to say that what we're talking about is not things that we only read somewhere or we think that this is true or somebody pays us to say. We are talking about things that we are living every day as medical doctors, our people of faith, as Christians. And let me finish with this. One of the things that I love about the Adventist organization worldwide is the fact that thanks to the Lord, we have so many resources on our hand. And I can tell you, when the church says something about health, this is because all around the world, the Adventist organization has the largest network of healthcare that is owned by a Protestant institution. So we know what we are talking about. We are not just repeating things. We are talking to you about things that we live every single day. COVID is killing people. COVID is making people suffering a lot. And with vaccination, we have seen drastic decrease in the sufferings and in people that are dying because of this disease. There are many other questions that we will address tomorrow. Why is it that we don't, while we are talking about science, I mean, there is one question, maybe Dr. Lendless, you might be interested in answering this. I'm not reading it, but the idea, the spirit of the question is that church does not practice science. Science has nothing to see with Bible. We act by faith. Science has nothing to see with Bible. Science cannot interfere with the decision of the church. I don't know if you want to react to this, but this is one of the comments that we had in the chat.
I mentioned that in the beginning of my talk.
Yes, you did.
Is that the spirit of prophecy makes it very clear that science and the Bible are not at odds with each other. They, in fact, the one reveals truth about the other. And in the Bible, and I know this is referring specifically to the truths of the Bible, it talks about study to show yourselves approved, a worthy student, a worthy soldier of Jesus Christ. And we have been given the opportunity, and in the Bible, we are led to understand the heavens declare the glory of God. The firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, night unto night showeth knowledge. And so the Bible reveals the scientific brilliance of God. And as we understand and begin to understand more and more, yes, somebody has stated that God will reveal all truth to his children. He's doing that already.
Yes.
He's given us tools. He has given us opportunity. He has given us health principles. And he has given us the opportunity to understand better how to apply them, not only to live healthily, but to try and cure disease and to alleviate suffering. So again, that argument is arguing in favor of what we said right in the beginning. God has given his children and his people minds to think, to study, to learn, to apply principles. So that why? So that we can serve, so that we have quality of life. We can share this message and go home. And salvation will be the science of eternity. And when you read the book Education and you see what Ellen White says about the importance of learning from nature, from learning from those things around us, all of these things confirm God's great creative power. So, yes,
Yes.
We are blessed, and we should continue, and we should investigate, ask questions, but obviously realize where it comes from, knowing that God will reveal those things. Now we see in part, then we shall see face to face and know as we are known. So it's a
Amen.
process. It's a
Amen.
process.
Shall we add?
Amen.
Shall we add to this that the science was a creation of Christians? The first scientist in the history was vivid and faithful Christians that wanted to prove that there is a God, there is a mighty, very powerful God that is ruling over the universe, and that the very foundation of science was to prove that the genius of this God. So science is not at all against the faith. Science, including what's happening now in science only reveal the power of God and unwrap the ability of the human mind to go beyond the difficulties that we have.
And
I would like to add that sometimes we have a misconception of what science is. Science is discovery. Science is a study of nature, the laws of nature, the laws of physics, biology, chemistry. Without science, there are no computers. Without science, there is no Zoom. So without science, there is no iPhone. Without science, there is no car. There are no hospitals, no medications. Without science, there is no knowledge. So science is the generation, is the study, the investigation of nature to generate knowledge that has transformed the way we live. Without science, we would still be living in caves. But science has basically made our lives much more enjoyable, and we can live longer, and the knowledge that we have, that we can now continue the healing ministry of Christ in our clinics, in our hospitals, in our missions, with state-of-the-art equipment, with state-of-the-art technologies and medication. All those are the product of science. Now, there is a question that I would like to address in the chat. Is that, well, what about other scientists, renowned scientists, that have a different opinion about COVID, and the Lou Montaner example is provided? And that's a very good question, because there's always some scientists that doubt this. What Luc Montaner is arguing, that the use of vaccines may lead to hyper-aggressive strains of the virus by putting selective pressure of the virus. However, what we saw with the different strains, all the strains that are coming out from the unvaccinated population. They're not coming out of the vaccinated population. So the selective pressure for more strains is coming out of the bodies of people who are not being vaccinated because they don't have access to the vaccine, or because they don't want to be vaccinated, or because they're still waiting for their turn. So Lou Montaner's idea of selective pressure, of hyper-aggressive variants of the virus because of the vaccine, is being contradicted by the fact that we are getting variants arising not from the vaccinated people, but from the unvaccinated bodies. And that's why the scientific community is telling Lou Montaner, it doesn't work that way. Yes, it's possible that down the road we may get a very hyper-aggressive variant that will be immune to the vaccine. That's an entire possibility. But the argument that he's using is being contradicted by the data that the unvaccinated population is the one that is giving rise to the variants.
Perfect, wonderful answer to that question. I wish we had more time tonight, but our time has expired. In fact, we have gone over time tonight. but it was very beneficial in doing so. But we're not finished. There is a lot more tomorrow. And tomorrow morning, we will also look at the whole question of spirituality or religion or Bible and science. That needs to be dealt with. The Bible and science will be dealt with also tomorrow. And we have a lineup of great presenters tomorrow, including Dr. David Williams of Harvard University, Dr. Diop, Director of the Public Affairs and Religious Liberty Department at the General Conference. We have attorney Jennifer Woods of the General Conference. And we have a panel, and don't miss that panel discussion tomorrow afternoon. It's going to be dynamic. However, there's an urgent, short question that I did promise someone that I would ask and have it answered tonight. And the question is, can you mix the vaccines? Can one have the first shot of one type of vaccine and the second shot being another type of the vaccines, approved vaccines? Dr. Cassiano, maybe you can tell us.
Yeah. There are currently clinical trials to determine whether the mix and match approach will give better immunity. We still don't have the data clear on that. However, one of the concerns in the medical community is that as the virus changes, we need to produce vaccines that attack different components of the virus, not only the spike protein. So we have the messenger RNA vaccines that their role is to induce an immune response targeting the spike protein. Then there are other vaccines that use the whole virus. It's an attenuated virus, and it produces an immune response that attacks the whole virus. The Janssen & Janssen vaccine is like that. Interestingly, what we're finding is that the effectiveness of the Janssen & Janssen vaccine that promotes an immune attack against the whole virus, the effectiveness is much lower than that of Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, which promote an immune attack only against the spike. So the question is, if we have different types of vaccines that attack different components of the virus, the spike, the nucleoproteins, the capsule, other components of the virus, are we going to get better results? We have to wait for the clinical trials to tell us. A person may mix both vaccines, that it works fine, that's okay. But what works for one person may not work for 100,000 people. That's why we need what is called clinical trials. These are studies done with thousands and thousands of individuals. The problem, for example, with chloroquine and ivermectin is that some of the studies have been done in 20, 30, 40 people, and results are obtained and implications are discussed. But the clinical trials, the ones that really provide the answers, we need to wait for them because they take months, and we need to do those clinical trials in thousands of people. So within the next few months, we will know if the mix and match works or not.
Thank you for that answer. Very clear answer. And we have come to the end of tonight's seminar in this symposium. And tomorrow is going to be a wonderful day. Let's pray for a great day tomorrow. And that God's presence and his heavenly angels and his Holy Spirit will guide us throughout the day. At this time, I invite the president of the Guatemala Union, Pastor Gunther Garcia, to offer the benediction.
Vamos a inclinar nuestros rostros para tener.
Let's bow our heads to pray. Let's bow our heads. Thank you, Father, for this day and for the week that we already finished. Thank you for all the blessings we have received on your name and that we could make, for all the blessings that we have received thanks to your protection. by your love, and especially, oh Father, in this evening for this symposium that surely
hemos sentido en unidad y que tenemos
will
una
help us, and we have better information to move forward to proclaim that Jesus is coming again. Help us, oh Lord Jesus, to continue the health advices. Thank you for the information and the instruction we receive, because we have the Spirit of the prophets and the Bible that guide us to a wonderful health path with the protection of the power of the Holy Spirit. Now, Father, help us, give us a good sleep, and help us to be ready tomorrow with joy, and to continue with this symposium that will help us to be better Christians and to be leaders, to show the world that what is the true health. We pray, we thank you in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Muchas
Thank you, Pastor Garcia, for offering the benediction to us. And a good night to everyone. See you tomorrow when we commence at 9 o'clock in the morning,
Have a
9
good
o'clock
night.
tomorrow morning.
Bye-bye.
9 o'clock tomorrow morning, we will commence our seminar, our symposium. God bless you and have a good night.